Take two. Now that my microphone's on. Uh, yeah, we recorded this once more, or part of it. But then I was recording footage for something else I'm trying to do that just like needed to have no like mic audio at all, and I just forgot about that because I touch OBS once upon a blue moon. But that's okay. For this episode, we're back to just serious and for a little bit. Because we wanted to kind of go over the major and what happened, as well as some of the new season stuff. And Element 4 was announced.
Yeah.
And it's been a little bit, unfortunately, but I had to go to Michigan and fight my demons who fought back because I'm sick now.
Yep.
But that's okay. So,
It's okay.
like I did last time we tried to record this, like 10 minutes ago, I will hand the floor to you to kind of start the
Yep.
discussion of the major, because
For
CL4L made
take two.
a pretty solid impact, I would say.
Yeah. Uh, as I said previously, at one point, one of the only NA teams to actually get a map against an international opponent. So, and considering that they had a very last minute sub in with Uzi taking the spot, it's kind of, I mean, still pretty impressive that they were able to do that. Because, I mean, I had high hopes for them doing a similar, like, Parabellum type run at this major, hoping that they would somehow upset G2. I was kind of hoping for it secretly, just kind of the entire times, but it never happened. But regardless, still pretty impressive. And they, like, I mean, just really did a good job overall in considering the circumstances. And I mean, honestly kind of had a couple of close opportunities, especially against CAG in their
Mm-hmm.
second matchup. But I mean,
Yep.
like against Black Dragons, I mean, getting a 7-3 win against them on Chalet was pretty damn impressive.
Oh, I agree for sure. And I think the thing I find most impressive is that, considering it's kind of like a roster full of T2 misfits with people like
Yep.
Giddy, who's been there since the dinosaurs walked the earth, and Bino, who hasn't been around T2 as long, but has been kind of a staple since Element started, as well as like Packer, who was on Parabellum for a very brief time, and then that wildcard roster. Like, you have a lot of people who are misfits, like I just said, and they managed to put up really solid fights against international teams. And that is absolutely not nothing. And like you said, they were the only NA team to win a map internationally for a good chunk of
Hmm.
the major. So it really is nothing that you can scoff at. And I really want to see what happens in the SI qualifier, because I think it would be really funny if they just get kept like everyone again. And if they can get a more solid fifth that they could scrim with and actually take to the major or to SI, then who knows? They could do way, way better, because that's kind of the biggest, I think, benefit for them of going to the land is you get a ton of experience that you're just never going to replicate. Like, if you don't go to something like that, then they can now scrim around.
Yeah. I mean, it's ultimately going to be a question of who is going to be that consistent fifth because, I mean, Element is coming up and they were invited to that, which we will cover later. But we still don't know exactly who their roster is. It's not really been confirmed yet. So, I mean, especially with some changes that Pro League teams can make, they can bring up some of these guys from CL for Life, take them to SI instead of just sticking around with this team. Don't really know yet, but
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, it's kind of just a question of, I mean, can they keep up this level of consistency that they have for months at this point, and really since the summer and Elements like ended? That's kind of just been their reign of terror essentially. So I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know if they can do it. I hope they can because it'd be awesome to see them try to go to another international event and still do well,
Oh
but
yeah.
ultimately, don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the only thing they've lost, like in like the NA scene, was like Blitz, but I don't think they really cared about that one because it was like
And
in the middle of Element 3, which they then
yep.
won.
And the wildcard restart, they lost that. But then they were going through roster
Yeah.
switches at
That
that
was
time.
right
So
after they lost Wooz and Kobe, so
yep.
it kind of makes sense they didn't do as well, but then they got right back on their feet with
Yep.
Adam and Tristan. Which, by the way, I thought Adam was a very interesting pickup because they picked him up for an entry role, which he hadn't played in forever, if I recall.
Hmm.
Because no one like I think if it was like late AA, I think he started playing this more like soft support like role, and then that's what he played in Pro League with Wildcard,
Yep.
and he absolutely fucking killed it. Like I think by every possible metric, he did very very well, but it was not something I necessarily expected. So if they could find a solid fifth, then honestly, this is probably a good contender for the 10th Pro League spot in NAL if they can get a good org, which is what they're trying to do. That's why
Hmm.
Makers picked up that team in the first place. Why am I blurry? Was they
Nobody
wanted.
knows.
All right, we're back. Was they wanted a team that could contend for that 10th Pro League spot, so we'll see. But there was other stuff that happened at the major. Notably, my favorite result, G through 0-3 in Swiss stage. That's what I'm calling them
Oh
now.
boy.
Is G through? They lost to Sonics. It was like 12 rounds in a row, right before G2 finally got one.
Yeah. Got
And
7 0'd map 2.
Super shared this like video of like his tack timeout where like G2 called him and he's like, look man, like I don't know what to say. Alamo's shaking, can't call anything, the guy's terrified, like just keep doing what you're doing. Like because and you know, and both of us having been coaches, I kind of empathize with that. Like, what do you tell people when you're up 12-0 against, the team that thinks it's the best in the world? Like,
I mean, I don't know, because like that is legit sometimes just what you say in like those timeout situations where it's just like I don't know what to tell you guys. You've been doing everything just fine,
mm-hmm.
so just keep doing it. Let them keep making those mistakes, and then sure enough, they keep winning. So
Yeah.
okay, I
Um,
genuinely don't know than just like looking at G2. Just these last couple events has just been kind of weird.
yeah.
Because I mean, in theory, they have good rosters, but then internationally, they just can't seem to do anything.
Yeah. I mean, I
And I
think,
don't know
like,
if it's like a role issue or if it's just I or something else. I have
yeah.
no idea.
I mean, I know for a while, like, Fabian's been talking about, like, the team culture for G2 just not
Oh
being
yeah.
good. Because if you've watched, like, the interviews and stuff with Fabian, as a coach, he's talked a lot about how he doesn't really influence what happens in the server, like strategy, roles, like communication. That's up to the people in the server, like the players that are executing on it. He is just there to build a good practice culture and
Mhm.
team culture that brings out the best in everyone. Um, and from the sound of it, it sounds like G2 wasn't really vibing with him trying to do that because he's been he did like the podcast with like Ace, I think it was, where he was very outspoken about feeling that G2's practice culture and team culture was bad. And with, Beast Coast winning Manchester largely off of Fett working specifically to build the right team culture for them,
Yep.
and then the extreme fall off they had without that, I think that is probably the direction I would look if I was looking to improve G2 is how can I fix the culture of this team?
Hmm. Well, because I mean, even before the Manchester major, I'm pretty sure like their coach, I don't know if he's still the coach right now, but at the time sent out a tweet afterwards just talking about
Yep.
exactly what you're
Yep.
saying. So it's
I
like
remember.
that's a really weird tweet to throw out as the coach of the team. But I mean, like that just kind of highlights the exact problem that you're
Mm-hmm.
highlighting is just seems overall the culture and the environment of these guys aren't quite meshing as you would hope they would.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, they're the some of the best players in Europe for a
Oh yeah.
reason. That's why G2 goes for these guys, but yet just
They don't win
nobody can
anything.
really seem to get them to work together as
Do
a cohesive
they?
unit consistently. So I don't
Yeah.
know like how you do that because I mean Fabian did it a little
Mm-hmm.
bit back at SI when they won it all obviously, but I mean since then it's kind of just been a up and down where it works sometimes and then it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
and then shit goes off the rails,
Yeah.
they drop a few people and then restart the process.
I mean, since they've like won that SI, what if they like? I can't really think of like. It's just gonna be like a downwards decline since then. I feel
Yeah.
almost,
Because the
especially
next
since
major,
SI
they
this
didn't
year.
do much. Yeah.
Well, at the next
Hmm.
major, they went out in the first stage losing to Fear X, which is
Yeah.
like universally considered one of the worst teams that makes majors.
Yep.
And the other team, like, because first they lost to Liquid, which Liquid were like top 4 at that
Hmm.
event. So like, that's okay. You should not be losing to Fearx with the amount of money that G2 is probably paying those players. That's
No,
just not okay. Who did they even lose to this
definitely not.
major? Because it was like the Sonics
Uh,
slaughtered them
let's see.
in.
This major, they lost to Team Liquid in the very first round of Swiss, and then they
All right,
lost to
that's fair.
Scars. They lost to Scars 4-7, and then lost to Sonics, where they got 7-0'd in second map. So it's like, again, like two of them, definitely two teams that you probably can lose to, or at least it's acceptable if you lose to
Hmm.
them. Scars is
No.
just not quite on that level. I mean, but then even looking at Sonics, like losing 7-0 map 2, just disaster. That's disastrous right there. That just cannot happen.
No, it can't. So I'm anticipating a major rework of G2
Definitely.
again. Um,
If not before SI, probably after.
Probably. I don't, they're gonna switch out someone before SI. Personally, I think they're gonna drop Doki. Mostly because the last time they did roster moves, they dropped their best player on the roster, which is Virtue. So if they continue that trend, then they have to drop Doki. And then Doki will win SI and do better without them. Because that's another little fun tidbit is both players they dropped before this major made main stage, and I think it was
Yep.
Benja makes SI through points without having to go through the qualifiers at all. So the G2 alumni are doing very well without G2.
Hmm.
So yeah, I wanted to talk about that because I'm a hater at heart.
Yep.
And for once, a team did worse than my team. So, which I'd imagine as a Cowboys fan, you kind of have that same instinct to go in for the kill, like the once in a blue moon opportunity you have the chance to.
I mean,
Um,
yeah. I mean, my team just beat the Commanders in the craziest fashion this last Sunday. So, I mean, hey, I'll take it considering where we're at right now. So,
yeah.
I mean, I guess that kind of weirdly segues into our next point of how weird North America was this entire event,
Oh yeah.
especially in the Swiss stage. Like that, like, okay, let's take a second to just kind of refresh ourselves because I mean, like Dark Zero went out 1-3. Sonics and Space Station went out 3-2, qualified for the main stage, but they did it super slowly to get it there.
They also didn't do well on the main stage at all.
Nope.
I wasn't able to watch those games because, like I said, I was in another state. And I had other things I was doing. I think I was at a hockey game when one of those games happened.
Hmm.
But like we watched a couple of them. I think I caught like the tail end of like the Sonics game, and Sonics were doing really poorly. Why is okay? My microphone arm is falling, so I'm gonna give it to you again. But yeah, North America main stage was bad.
Yeah. It was pretty atrocious. I mean, like overall, I mean, SSG kind of put up a fight. Map 1 Clubhouse was a little it was pretty bad considering they lost 5 rounds on their attacks and then switched over and got 3 rounds on defense on Clubhouse, which I mean like okay, it's not too unexpected, but losing 5 rounds on one half on Clubhouse where you should be getting at least a 4-2 split or
Mm-hmm.
2-4 if you're on the attacking side first. That's not great.
Nope.
And even then it was just kind of looking like I don't know what these guys are doing all the time. It's
Didn't they
kind of
also
weird.
go to like bar games on like the final
Yes, I
defense,
think
which
that
is
was their final defensive round.
that was the round that
I saw that
eliminated
in
from
the
the
Opossums
major.
video actually. So there you go.
Shout out Ferris, by the way. You should go
Yep.
watch that video right now.
Hmm.
Ferris posts absolute bangers. I think he also like made himself a CL4L hoodie that he wore to the Montreal Major.
Oh, that's
So,
great.
yeah, yeah,
Love that.
I'll throw the his Montreal video in the description. You should go watch that. Fun fact, actually, he and I were supposed to do this before, long before I got serious, actually. So it's a bit of lore for you, from the inner workings of what I tried to start this like 6 months ago. But anyways, back to the topic at hand. I don't, it's just kind of a Brazil show right now, I feel.
Yep. Once again, kind of the Brazil show.
And then
I
like
mean,
BDS if it's Esports World Cup / Gamers 8.
do we want to talk about that next? Because I mean, that's kind
We
of
might
the
as well.
only other thing. So I mean, like, that's now 2 grand finals for BDS that they've gone to and lost outside of Esports World Cup or
Mm-hmm.
anything in Saudi. I mean, like, what is happening? Like, okay, because like they obviously probably should have won in Manchester, no question, considering that Beast Coast kind of came out of nowhere. But even still, like Beast Coast were hot, like you said. Fett just kind of brought in a very good system for them to win that event. So, okay, fair enough. They were hot. On to the next major. Should be able to win that. Win Esports World Cup. Dominated against W7M. And then come here. Oh, hey, it's the exact same team that
Yeah.
we just beat a few months ago. This should be free as shit, considering that Shaiko was talking shit before he even played a map.
One of like the 2 times he chooses to talk shit very publicly like that and he gets fucking hammered. Which by the way, that day, like 3 hours before that game started, the guy I was staying with like made me watch the Lions like game because he was a Lions fan, and we turned that on, and it was a slaughter because it was the Jaguars.
Oh, yeah.
And then we turned it off like near the end because we were like, well, who? I wonder who's gonna win this game, and then it was a slaughter again. um, so that was kind of funny. Fun little tidbit. Thank
Yep.
God I'm not a Jaguars fan. Although I
Nope.
did make sure to bully my friend who is one, for fun. Um, so yeah, but yeah, in conclusion, it was the org, I guess, that won. They got that just had that dynasty last year. Because Fury just hasn't been doing very well, if I recall,
No.
since winning SI.
Yeah,
Because they,
they've been. They made Manchester, but then they failed to qualify through last chance qualifier this event. And it was. It's definitely weird what's happened to them. I haven't watched enough of Brazil to know exactly what's going on with them. I don't keep enough of that. I have. They're normally on at a weird time for me to actually be able to
same.
catch those games, but I mean, just in general, I mean, Brazil definitely even some of their weakest teams, the 10th place team in the regular league, still did fairly well at this event, all things considered for them and where
Mm-hmm.
they were at the very end of their regular season. So I mean, good on them.
Yeah.
Brazil is just scary, just no
Oh
matter
yeah.
who it is.
Yeah, it's been a semi-consistent thing. I feel since I've started like paying attention to CG sports, is like Brazil's been doing really well. So the first SI I watched personally was 2020, where
Yep,
NFP came in second place, and then they won the next one where it was 3 Brazilian teams, then TSM in the top four.
yep,
Um, and then next year when TSM won, it was considered really impressive that like they were the Brazil killers throughout that entire event. Like anytime they went up against a
yeah.
Brazil team, like they had their fucking number.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and
Because
then
they're
they
one of
took
the
down
only
the Russian
ones.
Cyborg. Yeah, that team was always so funny to watch, by the way, because like they would like barely qualify for like international events because they just do really poorly domestically, and then you're like, well, it's time. They're just gonna lose, and then they'd go and they'd place like top four at like everything internationally.
Yeah,
It's kind of
it's
like the
that
opposite
was
of
a
G2.
weird team at the time.
I
So,
miss it, man.
but
Give me Chala back, dude.
give me Pojo back as a coach. Just some
I
point taken.
fucking agree, dude.
Like,
I
but regardless, it's kind of really been since 2020 that Brazil has just kind of
Oh
dominated
yeah,
just about everything. Because I mean, before that, like, as I started watching around like year one, season two, like Dustline when Blackbeard originally came out,
mm-hmm.
and it was kind of like, okay, yeah, they're scared, but they can't quite win anything yet,
Yeah,
except for like Atlanta City. That was the only other event that they actually
mm-hmm.
did well at. But regardless, outside of that, it was kind of like they're scary. They have potential eventually to do something and maybe win an event. But
And here we
other than
are.
that, it was just kind of NA EU, mostly EU winning everything. And
Mm-hmm.
now 2020 on, it's kind of like, well, it's the Brazil's game and
Yep.
they're just going to do everything. hope to God that someone's at least doing well enough to maybe beat them.
We've reached that eventually we're talking about. And it's been interesting to watch because it hasn't just been like one team either. It's been like
No.
consistently like they've been putting up different teams that have been doing very, very well.
Yeah.
So that's always fun to see. I was glad to see Loban win a major, by the way, because that guy's been kind of not toiling in the background, but like
The prodigy of Jolton?
obvious. Jolton's the connection, man.
Jolton is the only
We
connection we have.
bring that guy back. Bring back that old Aerial Arias roster with like him and like Gomez and Diaz and see if they can win a major. And Wimpy. Remember that guy?
Oh God, yeah. The one stage that he got brought in did super well,
Dude.
then we never saw him again.
He was in Challenger League like forever, and everyone was like, "This Wimpy guy, if you put him in Pro League, he's gonna kill everyone." And then they did, and he did well. I'm fairly certain. And then he's like the
Just
Avatar
disappeared.
man, just
I
when you need
don't
him
know where he
most.
went. Yep.
You know, so unless you have any other major talking points about the major,
No, I mean, just kind of covered everything because I mean, like BDS made back-to-back major finals and choked both of them in a, however you want to quantify that. And then Brazil's still scary, and NA has been weird. Let's just put it simply. I mean,
yeah,
CL for life qualified. That's already kind of weird in itself. That probably shouldn't be happening, but I mean, those guys have been
Hacker
hot
Star, my
for
beloved.
Packer Star. Yeah, I mean, it's weird. It's
Yeah.
all around.
Which,
But
by the
so we'll
way,
see how SI goes.
my
I guess.
prediction's the Packers going to a Pro League team for SI. He did too well at that major to like not go to a
Hmm.
Pro League team.
I'd be surprised if at least two of them don't go
I,
in some
I'm
way.
I'm fairly certain we're gonna see Adam and Packer make it back up to Pro League like one way or the other. Uh, Bino just like pissed off a trickster demon or something. Not Bino, Giddy pissed off like a trickster demon or something at some point in time. And
Man's
then I don't
cursed.
think Bino's bad, but I think he's less proven than the others are,
Hmm.
just because he's been around the least out of them. But who knows? I'd like to see that roster go into the NAL because I want to see how they do. But I would imagine it's more likely that like, um, someone like M80 or like I don't know wild cards. Like, well, Packers around and we dropped him previously. Shout out wild card. Great
Let's
interview.
go.
Um,
Yep.
but Element 4 was announced recently.
Yep.
And that's the thing. So, given that you cast Element, I am told,
At least I did.
along with what's that guy?
Happyaka?
No, I got
Mm.
cast Collegiate.
I got cast
Yeah.
Collegiate. That's crazy. Damn.
He was casting Collegiate recently.
He was. I casted a collegiate match with him. I
Wow.
actually casted two. So there you go.
Um, again, this is the benefit of having Happy's casting duo on the broadcast.
We get to diss him like crazy, and I
'Cause
don't even know if he knows.
he's talked to me about it a couple times. He doesn't watch these much, but like he'll like tune in and we're like bullying him. And he's like, "Man, what the fuck?"
Man, what the
Um,
hell?
he
Anyway,
said, by the way, that if we didn't bring him on at some point, he was gonna fire you. So
I guess I gotta bring him on at some
yeah,
point if I want to keep my job.
job security demands that we bring him on. But bring yourselves back to center after that side tangent. So far, we have a few teams that have qualified for the previous qualifier, as well as some
Mhm.
invited teams. So divided, we have Wildcard Aces, CL4L, SSG Academy, Carnico, Thrive, Fluffy Amers, Cruelty, and Sintenegra. So kind of like last time, a mix of like NAT2 staples and some MXPL teams, I think it is,
Yeah,
competing. And then
yeah, pretty
qualified,
much. Yeah,
we have True Synergy Gold, Friendship Team, which is X Luminosity, um, Pew Pew Pew, which is friend of the broadcast Joe, and Mormon Battalion, which Mormon Battalion, if I recall, is like an evolution of that Wanted Goons roster from Element 2.
basically, yeah.
So Should be a really good time. We have
Yeah.
a lot of really interesting teams so far, which I like. Especially with X Luminosity being in there.
Yeah. I mean,
X,
especially because this is all the invited teams are basically, at least org wise, the exact same from what we already had back in Element 3. So nothing's like really missing there, except we don't have the normal staple of aerial rise yet. I quote yet because I don't know if they might try to pick up somebody before the season starts. Don't know. We honestly, I have no other insider information. I'm just kind of going off of who was here previously that I don't see yet.
my
I mean,
prediction
otherwise,
is either they pick up that Mormon Battalion or CL4L.
yeah. I mean, that'd be probably be my guesses too.
Although
That or
I want them to
yeah,
pick up Pew Pew
friendship
Pew
team.
because I think
That'd be
Joe
funny.
Dash Ariel would be really funny.
That
No hate
would
to
be.
Joe, by the way. He's a very chill dude.
Oh yeah.
But he is a little bit of a meme sometimes. Like he's in our notes as friend of the broadcast.
Because we keep
Um,
anytime we see him, it's always just a thing that somebody has to say. Friend of the broadcast, Joe. Joe Cesenia, by the way. Love
um,
that guy.
yeah, great guy. Shout out to him. Although he didn't follow me back on Twitter.
Damn.
For real, man. Sort of podcast and nothing happens. Second, two podcasts actually. Get fucked, fiend. But one what? So obviously, right, the elephant in the room. CL4.
Yep. Arguably. Why not? Right? They're only a step away from that. Yep. Hmm. Well, because Element 2, they bounced back. They were still probably one of the favorites to still win that event. Got to the grand final, lost to Envy. I mean, and then since then, yeah, you're right. They haven't really been the same since. And I don't even know who their roster's supposed to be. I mean, obviously, Carnage B is on here. That's a given, considering that his name is literally in the team name. That's no question about that. But otherwise, I don't know who else is really there for them to pick up that's not already on a team. So I'm
Yeah,
honestly not sure.
like I would imagine that we're gonna have something similar to like the last few times we've seen them. I know that in E3 they had a lot of trouble because Spiff and
Yeah.
someone else I think were picked up to Pro League because Spiff went to
Yeah, because
Wildcard.
Spiff got picked up in the middle of Element. Somebody got picked up right before Element. I can't remember who. You're right. I can't remember who it was, but
Because one of the first times I saw them, or well, the most recent time I saw them was when I casted them in Xenon losing 7-0 to Thrive.
ooh.
It was a hell of a game. Really weird to do color for, by the way, because every round was, oh look, there's a gap. I was like Dora, just like, can you spot the gap? Um, and then kind of with Element, we're going back to, or I say we. I'm not involved. I'm just here. Maybe one day, if someone gets fired. Um,
Maybe me.
but no pro league.
Anyway, no pro league teams.
No pro
And
league teams. Not a pro am
yep.
anymore. Back to three
Nope.
stages, which I think it's a good change,
Yep.
personally.
I
Um,
agree. Because honestly, the last Element season went on for a very long time. It's kind of hard to keep track of, or at least stay invested for a lot of like fans, I'd say, just to
mm-hmm.
kind of keep up with who's all still here. Because
Yeah.
we obviously had qualifiers, we had the Swiss stage, then we had the group stage, and then we had playoffs. So now we're just basically going from
Mm-hmm.
Swiss stage back to playoffs.
Yep.
Although that's been restructured this time too, but regardless, still back to 3 phases, which I
Yeah.
think for a flow of an event, I think works a lot better than what we
Mm-hmm.
had previously, just due to the fact that a lot of people and even some teams can't really stick around for all that long because
Yep.
Siege Esports just seems to blow up after like 6 weeks.
I think as well, so I think we should have pro-ams where T2 teams can play T1 teams.
Mhm.
I think that's good for the scene. But I also think that, like, you need a space for the T2 teams to play and just, like, be in T2 so they can, like, get better.
Mhm.
And so with Challenger Series coming up, what I'm kind of hoping for that I don't think is going to happen is, like, Element comes, like, sticks around as, like, a pro-am that, like, happens, like, once or twice a year, then you have Challenger Series. That's a pipe dream. That's not going to happen. But regardless, I think just going back to T2 teams is a good thing.
Yep.
And there were also like a bunch of us in Element last time that I don't think people really expected to be there just to kind of fill things out because the tournament was so long.
Yeah.
So you'll see more of the faces that you love, like Jazzman and Fellow and Crow and Light Rose and Sirius and Happy. And Klims and CDAPS, I think, on the desk. I don't know who's hosting this time, though. I'm interested to see that. After Korbeck got the call up that he absolutely deserved.
Yep. Love that
Um,
guy too.
Absolutely. Love that guy. He better be at Boston. That's all I'm
Yeah,
saying.
I don't know because I mean, obviously nothing has been officially announced as far as like talent goes, and then
Mm-hmm.
how everything's gonna work. So I'm not gonna divulge too much information, obviously, because I don't want to get in trouble. So obviously, but regardless, I mean, it's still gonna be very interesting to see how everything shakes
Mm-hmm.
out because I mean, smaller event overall in comparison, going right into SI right after this ends. And then obviously some teams are probably going to be trying to go for SI quals whenever that gets announced. So, I mean,
Yep.
going to have a little bit of a like kind of shakeup about some of these teams we might be
Mm-hmm.
seeing do well in the SI quals, like CL4L, possibly. So ultimately, it's going to be just kind of like who's going to be some of the top runners to go up against some of the pro league teams
Mm-hmm.
in the SI quals.
Oh yeah. So I'm interested to see it. I'm gonna be watching.
Yeah.
I think during this element, we're probably not gonna put this on hold necessarily, but I think it'll be a slower output just because this
Hmm.
guy's gonna have like stuff he's doing. Although who knows? Maybe I just like find some random guy from the street and like put him in front of a bunch of Lego sets.
Yeah. That or I just get fired. So there's that too.
I hope that doesn't happen.
I hope not either. I
I
like
hope
having a job.
I agree. Jobs are pretty cool. As someone who does not get paid to cast a lot, getting paid to cast is pretty cool. So
Yeah.
you want to keep doing that. But another thing, actually, that I just remembered that we should talk about: the Crucible. SFCL is back, but is the
Oh yeah.
Crucible now? That was just announced.
Hmm.
So we get that back. That is being masterminded by Zaysho, who is kind of a dark wizard. I feel. I don't know how he works, but that man can fucking cook.
Yeah. And sometimes he cooks weird if he wants to. So I
Oh
mean, there's
yeah.
just also that. So just take that as a given. This
If you
man can cook the best shit you have ever seen. It will be the best caviar ever, and then he'll just throw out fucking I don't know smiley face on pancakes. It's
do
it's
do,
it's all in the same thing too.
do
It
you
makes
remember
no
the
sense.
SFCL Pride tourney?
Yes.
Like, so for those of you who didn't see, it was a couch cast. So I was there, Sirius was there, Shifty was there for a little bit. We got Cassiopeia and Rin 47. We got Light Rose for a map. Um,
Yeah.
and it was just pure fucking chaos. And one of the teams at one point on like Lair, like used a shotgun to carve like a dick into a wall, and he kept flashing back to that.
Yep.
And he had this like AI generated video of these like dogs that he kept playing that was driving all of us insane. Like he he's kind of like a siege Michael Reeves, if you know who that is. Like he has all these like
God.
talents that he's acquired, and he uses them for evil.
I don't think I've ever heard a more apt description of who he is, but that makes perfect sense, honestly.
if
So,
for those of you who don't know Michael Reeves, the first video I saw of his was he gutted a Tickle Me Elmo and put a camera in its eye, and then 3D printed components that he stuck inside of it, and then he wrote code so it would look at your face and detect your race and say racist things to you. Um, which he's done other things that are not like that. Like he had a fish that traded on the stock market that was really funny. But if you know who Zaysho is and you know who Michael Reeves is, I think that's I think that's the best way to describe it
yep.
personally.
Mhm.
So I'm very excited to see what he does with that. I'm probably gonna play the quals as well because I don't think I'm casting that event, unfortunately. So I'll just be running around the qualifiers and I don't know, just
Just doing whatever.
dicking
Yeah.
around.
Yeah.
um, so that'll be fun. I know I read through like all the tweets going over like the format and everything, and it wasn't like anything revolutionary. And we don't have like tons and tons of details yet aside from that.
No.
So
Just a format, really, and that's kind of
yeah,
been it. So, I mean, ultimately, I think it's still going to be a very good event. I mean, it's run by Seisho, who's just been kind of in the background of a lot of things, especially a lot of like pro league level stuff. So, I mean, he worked at Brazil SI,
he
so
did.
like he's always in the background of stuff that is always of really good quality. So, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if that's kind of the level of work that we can expect out of him, then this should be a great event.
Oh yeah.
So ultimately, I'm really excited. I hope I get to work it if I have time. So I'm not really quite sure, but ultimately, hey, there you go.
Okay. A kid can dream.
Eh.
So there's a new season on the horizon. I forget what it's called, but it's written down in the document. I haven't actually seen as many of the changes from this, just because I was in another state for a while and I didn't have my PC on me. Because obviously it's a big metal brick that was not going to be transported. And then the day before I flew out, I got sick, so I've just kind of been
Oof.
like, um, not looking at the patch notes to be honest. So I know there's the Blackbeard rework that I saw Sploit play that looks really scary, especially
Yeah.
when we've already had shields be the way they are for the past like God knows how long, and now we got another one. So
Yep.
that's fun. But he has
I
a
mean,
gun now.
he has a gun. I mean, he still has a gun, but it's a different kind of way he's wielding the gun. So, I mean, since I actually watched the reveal event and I've been able to look at the patch notes, I mean, Blackbeard now has the whole adaptable shield. Basically, like Ali already said, can basically wield it around, just drop down that little glass panel and then shoot with his Scar or the DMR. I forget exactly what it's called. But regardless, he still has one of the only primary weapons that you could use as a shield, which is terrifying, but it is very slow to ADS. I mean, there was one video I saw from Kudos that showed that if you use the iron sights, laser, and then like maybe like the angled grip, you can get a really much faster aim down sights. But even then, it's still kind of slow considering what they've done to make it not completely unfair. But still, it's gonna be a nightmare to deal with. I would imagine if Monty's banned and Blitz isn't really exactly favored by a team or it doesn't quite make enough sense, then we'll probably see a lot of Blackbeard play that or he gets banned quite a bit. I don't know yet.
That's my
Don't
prediction.
really know what the scrims are going to be like for a lot of these teams. I mean, I think Element's probably going to be our first real look
Mm-hmm.
to see how a lot of these teams really think about how
Yep.
Blackbeard is. Because, I mean, this is just all theory crafting on our end on
Yeah.
how he's actually going to be. So, but I expect him to be brought out a decent amount if he's not banned. So,
Yeah.
I mean, but that's also in couple with shield nerfs, which
Yep.
thank God that's happening because I've been getting really tired of just watching constant shields just kind of dictate around. It's been really just kind
Yep.
of
And
not
even
the
when
greatest.
like the shields aren't in the game, like the bands that attack are very stale now, just because one's always going to be Monty.
Oh
Like
yeah,
10
or
times out of
Blitz, one
10,
of the two.
or both I've seen quite a bit as well,
Yeah.
and then people will still bring out Fuse Shield. Shout out Teddy, and
Yep.
like it's just not like I think entertaining from a viewer perspective or from a player perspective to have the shields like that because
No.
in the ban phase there's less interesting stuff to talk about because it's like well we're gonna see Monty banned out because he's Monty, and then like Capitao if you're casting Fluffy Amers, and then like every round like JJ's gonna be on fucking Blitz, and it's not as entertaining. Um, Although we are gonna have Blackbeard in play, and I'd imagine that if he is as much of a terror as people think he is gonna be, then we're probably gonna see him replace Monty as the default attacking ban. But we'll have to see. I'm personally holding off full judgment until after people have had their hands on him for a little bit, because we've been
Yep.
wrong about this stuff a lot before.
Hmm.
I remember a very brief time when people thought that Grim was going to be overpowered before he released, and then he released, and it was the
And then
opposite.
it was shit. So
Yeah,
yeah.
so we'll see. I think Element's really going to be like the first proper test for how he is as an operator.
Hmm.
But I think the most interesting thing about him is it's like a shield for entry fraggers. Because you'd have entries that would play shields before, like Rival, but like this is like a shield that like I would wager a majority of entry players could probably play pretty comfortably. And I mean, hell, I talked about the Spoit clip earlier, where he played Blackbeard like you would play Ash, but with a shield on his face. So
Yep.
we're already kind of seeing people do that. So I'm interested to see kind of how that ends up manifesting, and if it's used like you'd see like a Monty used, or like are you going to see it be much more aggressive? Like, what's going to be the impact of it?
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, with these new shield changes in, where the time to actually like keep them from sprinting at you is a lot more increased. Like, there's only 5 bullets that you need to shoot, and it lasts for a lot longer too. So that I don't know how that's gonna really impact because we don't often see that mechanic so all that often as it is currently. But I mean, hopefully, maybe it will help a little bit. But and then the guard break thing, I think for me is going to be the most impactful thing to see, especially against a Monty, because I mean, currently melee priority kind of favors shields, but next patch it's going to be favoring whoever actually melees first, which that's really good to see. But guard break against Monty, considering how often he's been brought out, especially in pro league level, like element, everything else, that's going to be nice to see because now if you actually coordinate with somebody, then you can easily take him out on your own. So that's great. So ultimately, I don't know. Blackbeard is going to be a very interesting case study for
Mm-hmm.
this next season and seeing how powerful he really is and how people can actually utilize him to a great effect because he can also sit on windows with that damn thing. So that's another scary thought.
Oh yeah, I want to see how Scoob uses him.
Oh God.
Scoob's already kind of like a Blackbeard maniac if you've watched like Wanted Goons or like any team
Hmm.
he's been on play. But now they've given Blackbeard a lot more toys to play with. So just Scoob specifically, I want to see how he does with Blackbeard. But was there a
Gonna
new
be terrifying.
operator this season that was announced?
Nope, that's it. Blackbeard is the
Interesting.
only like remaster, but then we also get along with the shield changes and Blackbeard, everything with that. We also get some buffs to Sen's Thunderbird and the Ying nerf, which Sens can now toggle on and off the light wall that they have. So that's honestly kind of crazy. And now Warden and Glass can't see through that thing. And also
Interesting.
bulletproof cameras. So nobody can really see through that thing whatsoever.
If you are someone who plays VIP on Cafe when you defend a kitchen, I would recommend learning a couple different prayers because you will need them now.
Or bring impacts.
Or
Bring a
bring
lot of
impacts.
explosives.
One of the two. Why not
Yep.
both? Honestly,
Honestly, yeah.
as someone who's played that position quite a bit and who's fallen victim to that rush quite a bit, Ward not being able to see through it is going to have a lot of impact on that, I think.
Hmm.
Although, like you said, bring impacts, and you'll probably be fine. But that,
Hopefully.
I want to see how the Thunderbird buffs work personally, because she's been like around sometimes in competitive, but she hasn't
Yeah,
really been like,
been very on and off for her.
yeah.
But I think this kind of puts her in the right direction. At least it brings
Mm-hmm.
her more in line with Doc. I think, in my opinion, it doesn't really quite work the exact same way, but I mean, the heal over time until you're full HP is kind of a big deal. So, I mean, like, especially if you have a deep roam, for example, and then get shot, come back to site, get stemmed up by the Thunderbird, eventually you get back up to
Mm-hmm.
full HP instead of just having to wait the entire time. That's honestly kind of huge because let's say it's a 4v2 and everybody who took damage off site came back, got stemmed up all the way, and now everybody's back to full HP, and the attackers are like, well, shit. We dumped all
Yeah.
this damage into them, and now they're all back up to full HP. This is a nightmare.
Yeah, I do think balancing problems like that are interesting though, because they'll have like two operators that do the same thing, and one of them is just going to be better at it than the other. Like
Mhm.
that's just how things work. Like I've been watching them try to do that song and dance with Sledge and Buck for
Oh
years now.
god, don't remind me.
Like,
Jesus.
just go like just thinking on like how those two operators have been balanced relative to one another, like in the time I've been playing, is kind of wild. Because when I first started playing, like, they both had ACOGs, they both had frag grenades. But like Buck just had a really, really hard gun to control.
Mhm.
And then Sledge's like L8 was like negative recoil. Um and then I think they took like,
They took Buck's nades.
yeah.
They made it easier to control the C8, but ultimately at that point losing the frags was kind of a big deal and he kind
Yep.
of lost a lot of presence. And then I think that was when we finally saw a nerf to Sledge in removing his SMG 11, and then eventually I think we got the also speed nerf where he
Mhm.
became a 3 armor. So that was the other thing that's kind of now brought Buck back into a position where, okay, he's probably the best soft breacher we have, as well as when he had the Gon 6, but now he doesn't, but still probably the better one because
Mhm.
considering that he's a lot faster than
Yep.
Sledge at the moment. So he's just a lot more versatile in some ways.
Yeah, usually on maps that are very like soft bridge heavy, you'll see a combination of a ram and a buck to be
Yeah.
brought. With ram being able to do a lot very quickly and very hands off, but buck being able to be very precise. If I recall, the logic with making Sledge a throw armor was that he could like tank nitro cells faster, but like
Except he's
now
slower to dodge them now. So
yeah, he can't dodge them, but he just makes more noise.
yeah.
So if there are already holes in the floor and they can hear you, good fucking luck. Just bring Buck. Bring Buck Hollow, then you can swing people good as well. That's what I do. But so we'll see if this becomes a circus between Doc and Thunderbird, like it did between Sledge and Buck. Or now a little bit Ram. Hopefully not, because it's really
Hope
weird to
not.
watch that happen like over a period of time. Then you think on it later, and you're like, wow, that was really fucking weird.
This is insane. But then
Very insane.
yeah. Then the only thing really left as far as like changes go, except for shotguns got a small buff to certain ones, is the Ying nerf, where no longer if you go to a max charge when you hold the Candela in hand, will it just pop instantaneously as soon as it hits the ground. No longer does that. So now it will roll for at least 2 seconds on a max charge. And I think on like a medium charge, it goes a little bit longer. Same with like just if you just throw it as soon as you press the button. So ultimately it just makes it a little bit easier to shoot the candelas as soon as they're thrown out, and that's the idea behind it. So
Mm-hmm.
hopefully they get a little bit less oppressive, although I doubt that we'll really see much of it, even at the higher levels.
Yeah, Ying is mostly used for like execute util or like rush util.
Yeah.
And rush util you kind of needed to go really fast, or probably not going to see that being used as much. Honestly, we'll probably see Sense brought out a lot more, especially since Warden can no
Hmm.
longer see through the Sense barrier. Whereas he can still see through the Yings, which are now delayed. So I'd
Yeah.
imagine Sense is going to come into the meta a little bit more, especially with
Hmm.
the ability to toggle them on and off. But this is all just speculation. Who knows? Like that's the thing that if there's one thing I've learned from watching I'm playing this game for almost fucking like 6 years now. Is you have no idea what the meta is actually going to look like until you have your hands on it, and until the pros have their hands on it. I think the best example of that was like Goyo. People were very split on Goyo when he first released, and a lot of people didn't think he was going to be that bad, and then he was.
He was terrible.
Especially combined with Wamai, who had a shield, by the way, for a not insignificant period of time. Wamai had a shield.
Don't know why that was a thing, but yeah.
Remember when Smoke had a shield? I called for that to be removed at some point. Someone called me crazy, and I was like, dude, he's like, you got a shield, you got a shotgun, you have execute deny utility. Like, dude, he's the one-man army.
I still miss it. I still kind of miss it.
Oh, of course,
I'm
I still
not
miss
gonna lie.
it because I'm a smoke one trick, right? So if I had the shield, then I would be like the best player alive. But...
Hard support for life over here. I mean, I don't hurt my people. I don't touch Thermite, don't touch Mira, don't touch Smoke. Just don't touch them. They're perfect the way they are.
I spent most of Project Harmony playing entry on attack like Ashe, and then going to immediately like Smoke on the defense. It was crazy. I don't know. Roles are weird, especially nowadays.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going for about 51 minutes. So unless we have other talking points,
can't think of anything other than just should be a very interesting season in terms of just both element and then just collision point in general. I mean, I think even though we're not getting a new operator, I still think the change to Blackbeard's interesting. I mean,
it's been long overdue.
I mean, it's long overdue at this point. It's kind of a dumb mechanic the way he was originally. Even back when he first released it, it's like, really? This is what we're already doing? Okay, I thought this would have been a year 5 thing, but sure. Why not?
Yeah, for sure. I'm looking forward to it. It'll be a good time to see. We'll see how Element goes.
Yeah.
We do know who the next guests are. We're just need to schedule things with them. And I it'll be fun. Unless he's forgetting who I'm talking about. Which I hope not.
Oops.
Yeah, we'll hopefully that one will be relatively soon and not like forever between episodes. As
yeah,
we
hope
both
not.
grow old. And time passes inevitably. Before you know it, entire season.
And we all die.
We all rocks fall. Everyone dies.
Everyone dies.
That being said, thank you everyone for watching. We will see you in the next one. Both of our socials will be in the description below. As well as, like I said earlier, that Opossums video, which you should absolutely watch. That man produces fucking bangers. And he's usually around the majors as well, so you should go say hi if you can. But until next time, I'm Aliossz, and I've been joined by Sirius, and this is Match Point.